had a previous secular career that was full and rewarding, and I had achieved everything I had wanted to achieve in life, but something was missing. And so I began to discern, what is God calling me to do? And I had the opportunity to attend through the Louisiana Conference Spiritual Leadership Academy to attend a series of retreats on discerning our call. And that I really didn't even know what deacons did. And, deacons kept appearing before me, and listening to some of the stories of other deacons, and the challenges they had in getting their academic requirements and going through the process. I remember asking, why would anybody go through that? But lo and behold, that's the direction God was leading me in. And it was presented to me that in the United Methodist Church, that I could have an authorized ministry in what I was doing in my secular career, which was conflict resolution, encouraging a more civil discourse in the legislative arena and in the business community. And so after I went through the ordination process and was commissioned for ministry and ordained, that was my first appointed ministry, was in extension ministry outside the local church, in the business and legislative arena to encourage more civil discourse. That's how my path led me to ordained ministry as a deacon. A memorable story when I was asked to pastor these 3 small rural churches. I had gone to meet, to get acquainted with them before my first Sunday, and I went to meet with the chair of the SPR committee. And so I was asking, since I was stepping in to fill the role of a pastor who they had had for 16 years and who had recently died, I asked, I'd like to have a smooth transition, and can you tell me some of the ways that Pastor John served you all? And so the answer was, and this will always stay with me, they said, he was pretty easygoing. Pastor John just pretty much let us do our thing, but there was only one thing when he laid the rule down, and I said, oh, what was that? And she said, no pets in worship. And I said, no pets in worship? I thought she was pulling my leg or something. She said, yeah, my daughter has a rooster that follows her everywhere. And so she laid down the law that the rooster cannot come to church. Well, as it turns out, I got to meet that rooster. The rooster's name was Timothy, and Timothy did follow that little girl everywhere she went. He would chase people down like a guard dog, and she would even give Timothy spa days where the rooster would soak its feet and a little, like when you go have a manicure, she'd give him a spa day. So that was a memorable welcome to one of those congregations, which I think was delightful, and they were wonderful people. So another story that comes to mind, that I chuckle about. So in my role as chaplain at Centenary, the campus is diverse as far as there are non-Christians, there are atheists and agnostics, and so I would wear a clergy collar so that folks would know that I am the chaplain, and also that a lot of denominations don't have female clergy. So I would wear a collar on certain days, and some of the questions I would get from the students were priceless. So I had one student ask me, now I know when a man wears a collar that you call him father. Does that mean I call you mother? I said, no, but that's a good guess. Then another student asked, they knew knew that priests wear collars, and they asked me if I was a priestess. I said, no, I'm United Methodist clergy, but so that's a memory from my time as chaplain. And then a story that touches my heart, and the true purpose of my having been a chaplain at Centenary College was to just reach students where they are in their faith, whether they're seekers, whether they already know God and are trying to grow deeper. But there was one young man who I met my first month on the job as chaplain, and he was curious. He was Muslim, and he was curious about Christianity. And so he would start stopping by my office frequently to just talk about religion and beliefs. And he was actually on campus as a student for 5 years instead of 4, but he was one of the smartest young men I had ever met. He went on to start taking religious studies classes, and finally, during his senior year, he enrolled in the Christian Leadership Center, and that's one of the most rewarding times with students. There were many more. It was such a blessing to serve in that role as chaplain at Centenary College. So I'm grateful for those who nurtured my call to ministry, and that was my church family at my home church of Broadmoor United Methodist Church. And so Reverend Ken Irby was serving at Broadmoor at the time, helped me recognize my call and lead me in the right direction. And of course, Reverend Carol Cotton Wynn for leading the Conference Spiritual Leadership Academy. And then my 2 clergy mentors as I was going through the candidacy and ordination process, that is Reverend Pam Cruz and Reverend Pat Bates. And then, I'm eternally grateful to the Dean of Students at Centenary College, Mark Miller, and the president, Chris Holloman, who hired me to be the college chaplain at Centenary. And I'd also like to thank my former DS, but who is now my current pastor at Broadmoor United Methodist in Shreveport, and that is Reverend Wyber Price. He has always given me wise counsel and has always been there with a listening ear and an encouraging word. So most thankful to Wybra. You know, I'm growing into the idea of being a retired United Methodist minister and honing in on the United part. It's that connection all across, from the laity to the clergy to Methodists across the nation and in the world. And having gone through that difficult process that we went through a couple years ago, the fact that we are still united in our beliefs and in our faith in Christ, and that we can still worship and serve God together. As a retiree, I'm told that United Methodist clergy never really retire. You know, we're always continuing to serve, and I look forward to that. Yeah, I'm learning to live into what it means to be a retired United Methodist clergy.